Welcome to the PHONEWORD workshops on Wednesday, January the 14th, 2015. It is 5 p.m. Eastern Time, and today we are going to be talking about ENUM Registry Federation, WebRTC, and blockchain technology. And this will be part one of two, the two-part series. Please bear with me just a moment while I add some more folks to the Google Hangout. And we will have Henning Schultz-Rennie will be joining us about 30 minutes late. He has a conflict. We do have Penn Faust of AT&T online, and Peter Segede just joined us. So welcome, Peter. I'll go through some invitations, or excuse me, some introductions here in a moment. Peter, can you hear me? Okay, Peter, sounds like you've got your microphone on now. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Hello.
I can. You sound great. We also have Penn Faust from AT&T on the conference bridge, and I welcome you to the PHONEWORD workshops, Penn. Penn is involved with numbering for AT&T and has been active and a key member in the ENUM initiative for a number of years, and I've had the pleasure to work with Penn on the ENUM LLC, Country Code 1 ENUM LLC Technical Advisory Committee, as well as some other, many other industry groups and activities. So welcome to the PHONEWORD workshops, Penn. Anything you'd like to say in addition to that introduction, Penn?
No, thank you, Jay.
So, and Peter, for those of you that might not know, is the project manager for enunum.net, which is a global consortium of academic and research institutions around the world. I think they number about 35 or so at this point in a number of different countries, or maybe it's 35 different countries. And enunum.net is actively pursuing a strategy or a platform to build ENUM connectivity among research and academic institutions around the world. So welcome you to the PHONEWORD forum today, Peter.
Thank you for the invitation. Yep.
Anything you'd like to say?
No, not at all. Thank you.
Okay. So as I said at the beginning, there might be some other folks joining us. Henning Schultz-Rennie is going to be about 30 minutes late, and I have to send him an invitation on the Google Hangout as well. So I'll just open it up at this point. Anything anyone would like to say before we go into the presentation? Okay. Peter, I would like to ask you, I know there's been some emails exchanged on the enunum email threads regarding numbering, and currently this morning I saw one where you were having a conversation with Dean Bubley, who addressed the AT&T hackathon that occurred in Las Vegas recently. Anything you'd like to say about the just numbering, addressing, and so forth in general?
No, I think it's a very good sign. I mean, the list has been dormant for a while, and now all these topics that you basically initiated to this group, it seems that at least has started some discussion among the participants, which is good. So I'm really happy with that.
Great. Awesome. Well, I know, Peter, you've been a champion of ENUM for a number of years, and you have, you know, actually, for that matter, so has Penn, and we've all seen the possibility of ENUM, and yet it's been elusive, to say the least, in getting any kind of traction behind what was originally envisioned as end-user opt-in ENUM. And now I think we're finally at a point where the elements are coming into play to have that actually take a new path and a new role. And of course, private enum has been active and a key part of contemporary communications for a number of years now. However, the end user opt-in enum has been stuck and mired in a number of issues. So I think with WebRTC taking shape the way it has, we're in a new position to basically move forward with what was originally envisioned. So let me go ahead. Well, first of all, before I get too far into this, I do want to send Henning an invite. So please bear with me. Let's see. Okay, Missy wants to join us as well, Peter. So I'm going to send him an invite as well.
Yeah, that's good. Please do.
Yeah. And I apologize for this delay. And searching. Let me send Missy his invite so he can join us. And would you like to do a little introduction of him, Peter, while I'm sending him an invitation, just so folks know who he is and what his expertise area is?
Yes, so as Jay already mentioned, I'm a project manager within the research and education community. In Europe, we have about 42 national members. Those are all the European National Research Education Institutes. And Mishi is working for the Hungarian Research Institute. And he's pretty much involved in real-time communications, WebRTC, in all kinds of media and communications related services that the research and education networks are offering primarily for higher education, universities and research institutes. And Mish is one of the technical guys who is actually coordinating our ENUM service. So they are running the Tier 0 DNS service, and he's coordinating with all the other DNS operators, and he does the delegations, the country code delegations at the top level. So he's pretty much a technical guy with a very good technical knowledge, and he's also very practical in terms of registry operations.
And the other thing I would point out to folks is that he has produced some what I would consider to be excellent slide shares on WebRTC. And if you're interested in a very good, concise, detailed explanation of WebRTC, as well as getting into some technical depth, I would highly recommend his slide shares. So I've got, let's see. Sending this to Henning. Okay. And Peter, if you could ping Missy and let him know that I have sent him an invite, I would appreciate it. Okay.
Sure, I'll do.
Okay, cool. And I'm going to go into the slide share, or excuse me, the presentation that I've prepared Bear with me. Okay. All right. So you should be able, Peter, can you see the presentation?
I can.
Okay, great. And Penn, you have a copy of the presentation that was emailed out. So I will announce the slides as I move through this. Basically, what we're talking about today is, and what we're going to be talking about next week, a week from today, on January 21st at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, will be part 2 of this conversation. But we're talking about sort of a high-level overview of what it would look like if we would consider combining ENUM registries in a federated manner, along with WebRTC, and possibly incorporate blockchain technology. So the idea, the overall intention is that we explore some innovation in some new areas that I would say are quite unconventional and brand new in terms of their applications. And today we want to just talk about, what are the possibilities in terms of collaboration, in terms of exploration, and what sort of experiments might be structured around this. So, and again, the areas we're going to explore are federation possibilities, and this, we are on slide 3, by the way, WebRTC possibilities, and what would it look like to weave in blockchain technology. So that's our agenda for today. Overall, I think there are many, many dimensions to this. However, one of the most, I would say, appealing dimensions is to take the disparate addresses that we currently deal with, all the email addresses, Twitter handles, websites, Skype names, telephone numbers, all these disparate addresses, and instead of dealing with this chaos that we deal with each day, what would it look like if we had these addresses working together in some sort of coordinated fashion? And this brings up all sorts of identity management issues to deal with. How do you know who is control of that address, and then what sort of address set do you want to show to different parts of your community, because we all have different personas these days. So on slide 6, we have just a general indication that our intention is to explore and innovate. And on slide 8 is a diagram of these, or at least a visual representation of these 3 basic elements: a federation of registries, WebRTC, which might incorporate functionality. Well, certainly WebRTC is functional on the internet, but what are the possibilities of also weaving in, at least on the interim basis, some PSTN or public switch telephone network functionality? And then the third element is blockchain, which is, at least for me, very new and has been applied to currency in the past, but recently there's been some indications that blockchain technology could be applied and broadened to many other elements, including domain registry functions. So basically the question is, how could these things come together, or can they come together, and how might they work together? And if they can work together, and I'm on slide 10 now, what would that look like? So I'm going to pause there and ask if there are any questions And Peter, have you reached out to Mishi at all and connected with him? Do you know if he's still trying to connect?
Yeah, I sent him an email. I don't really know whether he got it or not. I'll try and search him on Skype.
Okay. Well, I'm going to reach out and see if I can invite him another way as well. Let me just pause there. And Peter, do you have any comments? What do you see as possible here? Or is it too early to tell?
Oh well, the whole picture is quite complex. So I mean, I like your introduction in general, but if we really want to have some meaningful discussion, I think we should somehow slice the whole problem space into more tangible pieces, just to try and understand. I'm quite new to this blockchain architecture as well, so I'm not really sure whether we could discuss that in high detail. But as far as identity federations in general, or federated architectures and domain registrations concerns, I mean, I have my own view, and actually our community has its own view on this, so at least I can talk about it if you wish.
Okay, great. Well, would you go ahead and talk about where the enrenum.net community is at regarding federation? And just kind of give us a little background on what the conversations have been. I know you guys have had some conferences and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, we have this ENUM service basically, and first of all, it's important to understand we are sort of a closed community. We are basically the federation of these research and education networks. We have peers all around the globe, so we are basically in Europe, but we obviously work together with Internet 2 in the US, the Latin American countries under Red Clara, the Asia Pacific countries under APAN, especially Australia, and other countries in the region. So what we do basically is that we run this ENUM service where the registries are these research and education networks. So it's kind of a closed service domain, and that's one of the reasons I think while our service is still there and still growing and still on, because actually there is kind of a trust relationship between these organizations running their national services. And of course, the universities and other higher education institutions, research labs are all relying to their services and to their networks. So within this community, we don't really have the general trust issue that you might have if you go towards unified real-time communication problems, or solving those problems. And that's one area where we are active, and the other area is a more general identity and electronic identity and identity federations. What we are also running a kind of a central hub of interfederations where we basically try and interconnect all the IDPs, the identity providers, with the potential service providers. So users who has an identity provided by their home institution, usually for the university or other third-party identity providers, they can log into various services and other service domains where we basically exchange the identity information in the background. So you don't have to have your username passwords for each and every application domain. You use your home credentials, your single identity, basically to identify yourself, provided by your identity provider, and you can log into various services using that information. That's another area where this community is quite active and actually is in the forefront of the developments. And actually the discussion between the two groups, whether we can somehow apply this identity and trust model to a specific application, which is real-time communications. It has just been started, and I'm actually trying to facilitate the discussion between two groups. It's quite difficult to convince them to talk to each other and try and understand each other. It seems to be using different languages, so it's not an easy task, but at least it seems now things are converging, so interesting topics arise. And there is a third component recently, which is WebRTC, which in my view basically a technology that can be used to to change the way how real-time communications over legacy networks are organized, and especially how the users can interact with those services via their web browsers. So that's a third element which we has recently initiated a task force on. So this kind of so if you're quite early on this in the convergence of these discussion tracks, individual discussion tracks, but it seems that interesting things may come up.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that overview, Peter. And Misha, you have joined us. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Perfect timing, because Peter was just talking about WebRTC. We also have Penn Faust on the line from AT&T, and I have a few questions for Penn regarding the AT&T's recent announcement for virtual numbers that's associated with their WebRTC development platform. But Mishi, is there anything you would like to say at this point? Anything you would like to go over during this session today?
First of all, thank you for inviting me. I want to hear the others' view and maybe after comment. And so nothing to add here.
Okay, great. Penn, is there anything you would like to say about the new offering and development platform that AT&T unveiled at the Consumer Electronics Show a couple weeks ago?
So first I would say I'm not closely associated with that work, but you can see it's sensible in terms of trying to find different ways of letting potential customers connect to us and interact with our network. And of course, one of the benefits that we can provide is access to the whole PSTN numbering world, and being able to use those kinds of addresses to reach folks and in turn be reached by them. In some ways it doesn't entirely break new ground from some of the stuff that's back in the old tech days of being able to have a number that may not reflect exactly where you are, what wire center you have a POTS line in. And we have a general program underway, to try to develop APIs and encourage other folks to leverage the capabilities of our network.
Great. Well, that was one of the things that I was most excited about when I saw the announcement about the AT&T platform, is the integration with the existing numbering that's on the public switch telephone network via WebRTC, because we've had some conversations about experimenting with virtual numbering, numbers that are similar to PSTN numbers but actually don't operate on the PSTN. So I think AT&T's announcement opens up a whole new realm where there might be an even broader integration a lot sooner than people thought. So anyway, that was my take on the announcement. Anybody else?
Can I also comment on this?
Sure, absolutely.
Especially using the virtual numbers bit. I would like to know Penn's definition on the virtual number. What's the virtual number for you?
So by virtual number, I'm really talking about a number that's being used by an entity that may be outside of the rate centers that number is nominally associated with in terms of the local exchange routing guide. And I'm pretty familiar with the North American numbering plan arrangements. As it turns out, the interface to that from the PSTN side is still very much based on legacy principles, in the sense that if someone is making a call from the PSTN to one of those virtual numbers that's been assigned, and it is exactly like standard North American numbering plan number. It's not a separate numbering space. It comes out of that space, out of the numbering resources that we've gotten from either NAMPA or the pooling administrator. And we have, a particular point of interface for folks to deliver that traffic to us in the PSTN, and then the capability of routing that to wherever the virtual number assignee happens to be, if they're in communication with our network, presumptively through the internet in some fashion, whether through our facilities or someone else's broadband facilities, or over, a mobile connection.
So these virtual number blocks or ranges are officially delegated to you, to AT&T, to use them?
Right. That's my understanding, yeah. So this is out of our numbering space, and the calls would route to our network, and then we can, essentially get the call to the entity that's connected to us. In many ways, it's not rocket science. It's probably not unlike what the Novatic VoIP offers are, except that, rather than having to send somebody a terminal adapter and all that kind of thing, it makes use of a standard, more general, but the WebRTC functionality, which is a little bit easier and less complicated in that sense.
Okay, so the reason why I'm asking this is that it has some historical reasons, but our community also using virtual numbers. These are numbers that are not officially delegated to any of the operators. They may seem to valid E164 numbers, but they aren't. They are not routed by any of the operators. And the historic reasons why we started to use them is basically video conferencing that has been developed within the research and education community for a while. And basically those video end terminals had no numbers to reach them. So NREN started to assign non-existing E164 numbers to those terminals that are outside of the official allocated number blocks, and just deliberately using them. So it's and we sort of expected some kind of danger if we use these, virtual numbers. Sooner or later we will have a clash when others will pick up the same numbers, and we might even clash with those. And it seems that if you started to use these kind of virtual number blocks as well, we are reaching to the point where it's getting really, really dangerous if there is no any centralized administration or any kind of collaboration around these virtual number block usage issue that could easily end up with a clash. Probably it's not that if you take a look at the national numbering schemes, probably it's not that relevant at the moment, but might be in the future.
Yeah, we had over decades back many uses of what I guess you could call virtual numbers in that sense within our network, whether for private networks or for internal applications. We had customers directly connecting to our inter-exchange carrier switches, and at the time, inter-exchange and local exchange were totally separate worlds, and inter-exchange carriers could not assign geographic numbers. And so when we had those direct connects, we had to make up various internal things that we used internally. Generally, we found that, that wasn't ultimately desirable, and that our enterprise customers who had us build private networks at the end of the day, well, they still really preferred that people, even if the traffic was carried over a private network, that it could use the public address assigned to the end user, so there was less to remember. So I think our perspective is there's a lot of value in the E164 numbering plan, and we're more looking at new ways to look at that, or we understand that there are scenarios and reasons why one might wind up assigning essentially a private numbering plan. And I think we struggle with this in other contexts. The Open Visual Communications Consortium looking at bringing up video conferencing. We would very much like to do that in ways that use E164 numbers that are capable of routing over essentially separate IP networks to provide high quality of service. So I guess our position, we wound up kind of saying, if we're going to use numbers, we'd like to use real E164 numbers.
Completely makes sense. And it would seem to me, Peter, in your context, in the academic and research community, even though you do have a sort of a closed, trusted community, ultimately it would be great to open up the addressing space so that anybody dialing in would have functionality that's on par with what you're offering in your internal space, including the identity management area, so that all of a sudden you've got ubiquitous connectivity.
Definitely, our primary recommendation is to get rid of the virtual numbers that we are currently using. So ideally, we would ride on top of the existing official E164 valid numbers, number ranges for any type of services that we provide.
Right. Okay. Well, I think that pretty well covers the WebRTC and the numbering. We touched upon a little bit upon the Federation capabilities or possibilities. So unless anybody has any other comments or questions, I'm going to go back to the presentation and just step through that quickly. Any other questions or comments?
If I can. So I think our network is very open, so not closed at all in any manner. So I think we are using our network as open as we can, and E164 numbers could be resolvable using our ENUM tree anyhow. And also I think the academic network is a very open network. So we are very open-minded, and we are allowing to call in from many places, and only focusing, eliminating speed and traffic that is unwanted, and all other traffic is allowed to our network. And as Peter mentioned, we want to use the E164 numbers, but sometimes it's not easy to achieve a big block for us, and sometimes it is a problem because we don't have the resources to pay for this E164 numbers year by year. For example, a small country like Hungary, it is a big pain to pay for a big block of such a E164 number. So this is why we currently using virtual numbers. But if it will be cheaper or affordable, then we will go for the public E164 numbers, and try to use. And I think this is the situation all around Europe in the research education community. The richer entrants are using EVN64 numbers from a service provider and buying and paying for them. The small ones that can't afford such a big block trying to use alternative solutions.
Great. Well, a lot of people, dismiss E.164 numbering and telephone numbers in general, and I'm encouraged by what's being expressed not only here but also in the community conversations. Dean Bubley published some information that I thought was very astute. Martin Geddes has talked about telephone numbering in the ITU context, and I think people are still trying to get their arms around what does this numbering and addressing look like in the future. I think one of the things that's generally sort of people overlook with the numbering is that people are accustomed to addressing that spells some sort of phrase, that they're, has more of a human connectivity to it. And, there is a phrase nature associated with legacy E.164 numbering, but it's mostly been sort of put on the back burner. So anyway, any other comments around the numbering or the WebRTC? Mishi, anything you see around numbering associated with WebRTC? I know WebRTC is an area of your expertise.
Yes, I think we will have silos, so bigger and smaller silos, and we need to connect this. We will have, I think, an institute can provide WebRTC service for the end users, and also we have big ones like Hangouts or whatever we are speaking about. But we need to connect these entities and standard-based signaling. WebRTC is only about media handling, so signaling is up to the service provider, and gatewaying and interfacing between these service providers will be a problem. And I think SIP XMPP is the signaling mostly used, and these systems has the E.164 backward compatibility using E.164 number mapping. So I think WebRTC will use mostly special identities inside the service provider network, but gatewaying and interfacing to others will be an important point, and in the gateways there will be a translation or mapping between E.164 number to these internal identities. So I think WebRTC is coming and will be more and more popular, and we need to connect anyhow these silos and connect with the old world telephony and old world things also, and also the IMS networks what are speaking SIP and also using E.164 number to identify endpoints and so on. So this is my view.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to go back to the screen share and just continue to step through the slides. So we've kind of talked about the federating registries, and last month in December on the PHONEWORD workshops, the topic was how to federate registries, and I put forth a proposal where there are basically registries that federate using let's say a bounded set of registrations that are parallel to legacy E164 numbering. So I'm not going to go into that in great detail, but it's my view that there is an opportunity to create something that's fairly simple, robust in that it can accommodate a number of different technologies, governance, policy sets, and methods to connect. So the advantage of federating registries is greater choice for the end user, redundancy, at least in this, let's say, this sort of testbed environment, a way to experiment not only with different service offerings, but also to experiment with governance and policy. So, assuming that could be accomplished, I think there's quite a bit of attraction to that. And by the way, I'm on slide 13. And one of the things, in my view, that's held back end-user opt-in ENUM has been this notion that, hey, we've got to craft this golden tree that is basically everything to everyone, and through a workable way to federate registries, I think that really takes the pressure off of designing something that is, everything to everyone at day one. So that's my view, at least, on the federation issue. Any comments or questions about that? And by the way, I think a lot of this, we can, well, Penn and I have been involved in this conversation for a decade now. And there's a lot that can be talked about, a lot of papers written, a lot of, alternatives. But in my view, until there's something that's actually up and operating and running, and you can put in people's hands, that's really the path to make some significant progress. And I think that things over the last 10 years, the ability to put something up and test it and actually get it into users' hands has greatly increased. Because what we can do today would have cost a ton of money even a few years ago. So that's the comments on the federating the registries. To go to web.
Jay, just one comment to this. I would suggest to take a look at the identity federations and all the developments within the identity federation world, because there is a very nice analogy here. So basically, the way how we federate the identity providers could actually be applied to the federation of registries as well. So if you imagine the registry is an identity provider, we have various models that we are experimenting with, or actually how the federations operate. There is a full mesh model, something that you draw in the picture on your slide. There is also the hub and spoke model with central login, or the same hub and spoke model with distributed login and stuff like that. So all these architectures are there. So I would suggest to take a look at that when you think about how to federate, for instance, registries.
Okay, great. Thank you, Peter. So I think, with AT&T's offering, with all the work that Nishi and the ENUM group is doing on WebRTC, I think it's pretty clear there's a lot of attraction, using WebRTC and having a browser-centric offering and basically platform with that connectivity. So I don't think we have to go over these points. I think they're pretty well understood. And the last part, we've got about 15, well, we could go as long as we want, and Henning hasn't joined us yet, so hopefully he will before we end. But I think the interesting thing that's occurred over the last at least 30 days for me is being introduced to the notion of blockchain technology, and in particular through the at least my discovery of Ethereum.org. That's an initiative that started about a year ago. Has well, let's step through blockchain a little bit before we talk about Ethereum and perhaps some other platforms and initiatives. So why blockchain? Well, it's, from what I've learned, over in my brief introduction to blockchain technology, it's a construct that is Swiss neutral. So there's a lot of neutrality to it, there's a lot of transparency. It seems to empower choice. It seems to offer a dynamic, and I'm on slide 18, by the way. It seems to offer a dynamic opportunity set in terms of authority can be established in a rather rapid fashion. The blockchain is dependent upon consensus being reached in a rather rapid fashion. It's market-driven, and it's open, it's end-user centric, and it's decentralized. It's also distributed, but I was watching a presentation recently, and there was a marked distinction between decentralized and distributed. So this looks like a very interesting and I would say potentially disruptive technology to apply in this realm. So I don't know if it would work. It just looks like an interesting place to take a look. And going on to slide 20, I think it's clear that this is a global opportunity. This flattening of the earth, this kind of erasing of boundaries, I think seems to be the direction that the conversation is going. And basically to slide 21, it seems to me that this is a collaborative opportunity to sort of have different land registries, if you will, or what's comparable to land registries, possibly work together. And the blockchain technology, and from my introduction of it, seems to be like this contemporary title history. So most of us are familiar with title histories related to real estate, where you do a title search, you see, okay, what's been the chain of title for this particular piece of land? Well, the blockchain technology seems to have taken that to a whole new level. And if we go on to slide 22, some of the resources that are available, Peter and I were on a session just before Thanksgiving with Jaromir Talir of CZ.Nic talking about his work with the FRED registry and platform in the Czech Republic and about 8 other countries. So although, FRED is kind of uses some technology that we probably wouldn't select today, we would probably select other technology. I think the FRED registry creates or offers at least a sort of a blueprint for what could be created, and I think it shows the community and what might be developed from scratch, what's worked and what hasn't worked in the past and in actual application. The WebRTC rollout by AT&T, I think, let's see, the WebRTC rollout by AT&T, we've already talked about that a little bit, where there's this opportunity to weave in existing numbering on the legacy PSTN into a more contemporary offering and platform. I think that's quite exciting, and weave that in sooner than we would have anticipated. And then the last thing is the blockchain technology. Primarily what's piqued my interest is this Ethereum.org initiative. And for those of you that might not be familiar with Ethereum.org, it's something that was started about a year ago. They have raised about $18.4 million through a crowd sale of what they call Ether, which is somewhat similar to Bitcoin. And basically, this group or this initiative, this community that's forming around Ethereum.org is taking what's flourished in the Bitcoin realm and the cryptocurrency realm and starting to apply it to some, well, a very broad range of applications, including organizational structure, including domain registries, and including software development, which I think is very, very interesting. So there was an article that just recently came out in Forbes you can take a look at that I think does a pretty good job of summarizing what is happening with blockchain in general, and also highlights some of the folks and some of the elements of Ethereum.org. So let's see, going on to slide 23. Basically, these are just some summary elements and next steps that I threw together that's certainly open for modification and deletion, addition, etc. But I think there is a new opportunity to collaborate around some of these elements. I think the direction and the value proposition around open source is very strong. In fact, it's my view that a proprietary offering is going to be harder and harder to implement, especially as Ethereum and some other initiatives develop which are open source. Federating the ENUM registries, I think, is a key. Experimenting with dispute resolution, I think, is also a key, and that's been an issue that's sort of challenged the whole end-user opt-in ENUM initiative for a number of years. Experimenting with governance, which, again, the group at Ethereum.org seem to be weaving into their platform. Actually building an experimental platform, I think, is key, which I talked about a little bit earlier. And I think there's an opportunity to continue to have sessions like this where there's guest presenters, and even going into some sessions where some actual coding takes place. So that's basically about all I have to kind of kick off the conversation. Anything any of you would like to add at this point? Peter, what are your thoughts on the blockchain proposal?
Well, as I said, I'm quite new to this, but yeah, the fact that the blockchain technology allows the network to build kind of a knowledge base which is maintained by the network, so there is no any central authority or any centralized organization behind that knowledge that administer that information, but it is the network. it is the federated infrastructure, if you like. It has a very big potentials to change the way how we do DNS domain registration, for instance, or including the ENUM registration as well. It basically breaks the usual trust chain that we are always rely on, and then creates kind of a general knowledge within the network where that people can, or each of the registries can then request and demand and store. Yeah, it has huge potentials, but as I said, I'm not an expert in the area, so I'm just watching what's happening out there. It would be interesting to experiment with. And as far as I understand, this Ethereum proposal is a kind of a testbed proposal where you can build various applications on top of the blockchain architecture and technology that might be interesting for our community as well to experiment with.
Yeah, I think so. Nishi, have you looked at it at all?
So sorry, but this technology is new to me, and I have only half an hour to see, and it is very complicated. So I really do not understand yet how it is working. But I agree with Peter that we should investigate this technology also, and see what benefits it provides for us. Anyway, I think the important and quick question about ENUM and E164 numbers, how we can identify the owner of the E164 number. So the identity, and how we can find a connection between the identity and the E164 number, how we can revoke the number, how we know who is the owner of number. Or number age, and I'm very interested how AT&T is handling this. Maybe AT&T is an identity provider also and can handle this very easily, but sometimes the two entities is not the same. So I'm very interested how the others handle this issue.
Right. Ken, anything you'd like to say about either blockchain or the identity management issues that are, you might have be taking around the virtual number?
I am even less of an expert on blockchain, but I do know that there's been discussion, for example, at the Audit Forum and an iTask Force. Some participants have, suggested a move to a distributed kind of registry. I haven't heard them say blockchain, but I've heard them talk about gossip and other protocols. And so some of those ideas, again, encouraged by some of the things that were said at the FCC's workshop back in March, are certainly ideas that are gaining currency. At the same time, I think people are increasingly concerned about the identity management aspects of E164 numbers, the robocalling issue, and all the bad things that surround it, have created a lot of pressure on making sure that if numbers get used, and particularly get used as caller identifiers in the PSTN, that there be some way of verifying that they're not being spoofed. And I think that will continue to be a problem. One of the reasons I think that the E164 numbers have hung in there, besides the interoperability aspect, is that there is some degree of traceability. Now, it's certainly diminished over what it used to be, but that's something that I think that folks are going to want to maintain a very close eye on as we start to bring in some of these technologies, because there's a whole set of people out there who really feel that the coupling of the internet with the PSTN has been a real security problem and things like that. And so we really need to be careful of those things going forward, that we don't exacerbate problems.
Right. Well, as Peter and Mishi and I and you have articulated, Penn, this is a very dynamic area at best, and complex, and in some respects complicated. So, and the whole conversation around security, I mean, the volume is increasing on that incredibly high right now. So I think there are, at least in my view, there are some rich opportunities to experiment with enhanced security around this. And hopefully Henning will be able to join us maybe on a week from today, or at least at one of the upcoming sessions, because in his presentations he has specifically said that one of the elements to incorporate into the testbed is some sort of history function, which it's my understanding that this blockchain relies very much upon some sort of chain of history and transaction history as well. So I'll be interested to see what he has to say about that at some point. In addition, he has proposed that there be a public-private, or there could be a public-private key architecture built into an ENUM registry or something like an ENUM registry that might open up some enhanced not only security but also usability functions. So it would be, ideally we would be able to create something where you can dial it and you can have encryption security without all the complications and hurdles that you have to go through today. So, any other comments or questions or areas that you think any of you think would be valuable to explore going forward?
Maybe a comment and a question. As I said in the very beginning, we have recently initiated a task force dealing with WebRTC within our community. And I think our community would really appreciate to learn more about this AT&T WebRTC API and all the initiatives around that. And I think the main reason why we are interested in that is because this is an initiative for a telco operator, and we're usually getting all the input from the internet companies, and the differences are obvious. You're immediately thinking about numbers and virtual numbers and enum and stuff like that. We don't get that from the internet companies. What we get there is invitations and rendezvous points and stuff like that, which is a complete different approach to the same problem or the same technology, if you wish. So I think our community would really appreciate to learn more about the view or vision how AT&T or other telco operators dealing with WebRTC or handling that. So I'm just wondering who would be the best person to try and invite to our meeting. I think we planned for a meeting. Mishi, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we planned for a meeting in April, close to the end of April, somewhere in Oslo, Finland, close to, I think it will be hosted by the Oslo University. Sorry, Norway. Yeah, I would really like to invite someone, even as a remote speaker, who could actually update us on things that are happening within the telco domain with regards to WebRTC technology.
Yes, I fully agree. So if we can have a presentation, then it will be welcomed very well.
And any thoughts, any suggestions along those lines?
Well, if someone can email me some information, maybe through Jay, about those things, I can try to ferret out who in our large company is really the best person to speak to those. And at this point, I won't make any promises, but I'll do my best to, try to find somebody who could provide some more information.
Thank you very much.
Great. Okay. Well, a week from today, on January 21st, 2015, at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. We'll have another session like this, and with any luck at all, we'll be able to have someone from AT&T that is focused on the WebRTC platform and offering. I have invited some of the folks from Ethereum.org to join the conversation, and hopefully they'll have a little more time to process the invitation and see some opportunities by, getting involved in the conversation here. So ideally, we can, in part 2 of this session, we can incorporate WebRTC from the carrier's viewpoint, as well as this, get some additional input on what are the possibilities around blockchain technology and where might it be appropriate and incorporated into this overall initiative. So the other thing that is coming up is there will be a PhoneWord forum on January 28th, Wednesday, January 28th at 4 p.m. Eastern, and that's more of a general conversation, not quite so technical as the workshops are. And I have invited Ethereum to basically be the guests on that. So, I don't know how that will turn out. In February, I believe it's, whatever the last Wednesday is in February, we have Dr. Robin Hanson, who will be talking to us about market-based network security possibilities, and he is definitely an authority and expert in using markets for security purposes and for signaling of various elements that can be an addition and a new approach to security. So I invite folks to tune in for that as well. So unless there is anything else any of you would like to cover, any other suggestions for next week or upcoming workshops?
No, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thanks, Gary.
All right.
No.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
Mishi, thank you. And we will conclude for today. And I'll be sending out some information for next week as well. So thank you very much, and have a good evening. And I appreciate you guys in Europe staying up late for this, because I know it's
so over midnight now. That's not a problem.
all right. Appreciate
Thank you
it.
very much. Yeah.
Have a good
Bye.
evening.
Bye.